Right, but they were to identify the moed. So as we progress further in time, I'm not going to keep probing you. As we progress further in time, we can see Shem and the line of Shem, right? We can go back, and that comes through the line of Seth, because Cain kills Abel, right? The first official killing, murder in the book, right? I would say the first execution would be Adam, because he did it to himself, being cast out from the garden. There's no greater death than being away from the presence of the Most High. So, what you see is a dedicated line going all the way down, all the way even until today, right?
We were talking about this morning. That's why I'm like, that's
Got it. So we see a preserved line. In order for the seed of the woman to come, he has to protect. He has to dedicate a lineage all the way up until that person comes, right? To be dedicated is to be kind of like set apart or whatever, right? So that's something important to know. So today we're going to step away from Bereshit, and we're going to specifically talk about the Feast of Dedication. Because, why is that relevant to right now? Right. It would actually be coming up. So, how do we know whether to observe it or not observe it? The question has come up, and nobody has talked about it. Nobody's like, yo, this is the research that I've done. Let's sit down and talk about it. So, this is the research I've done. Let's sit down and talk about it, because it's important. Especially if people are like, hey, should we be observing this or should we not be observing this? And if we should be observing this, how should we be observing this? That's kind of important, because our nature is to go, we got to observe something. Let's just call it this and we'll do our own thing. We'll have some really good food. We'll have some music. We'll dance a little bit. We'll party a little bit. We'll have a good time. We'll call it the Feast of Dedication, and it'll be just like everything else. That's like our nature, to like not read, to not research. We got to force ourselves to do this. So, if you have pen, if you have paper, please pull it out. If you're taking notes on your phone, please make sure it's charged. But I can tell you, I'm not going to teach this by myself. You're going to help me unless you leave. If you leave, I have no control over that. But if you help, you're going to help me. So, the Feast of Dedication, right? We talked about a bloodline all the way through, and we see that was important to the Most High. And then he put a sun, and he put a moon, and he said that these will be for appointed times and seasons, moed, special days, kodesh mikrah, right, or holy convocations. So things being dedicated to a particular task is important to the Most High. So up here you'll see a portion of the captivity etched in stone. Here you'll see a wall. Here you'll see an altar. Here, in this corner, what you see is an artist's depiction of maybe what the inside of Solomon's temple looked like. Here, you would have a depiction of the outside of Solomon's temple. And here, who knows what this is? Okay, cool. Can somebody like sum it up for me? Like give me a more concise. Was it Daniel?
Not Daniel.
I mean, not Daniel,
Nebuchadnezzar.
but it was the vision that Daniel interpreted
For
for Nebuchadnezzar.
our King Nebuchadnezzar, right? Does anybody know what it stands for? Just G Wiz. If you don't worry about it, because that'll get covered some other time.
Clay, brass, silver.
Right, but I'm asking you, like, do you know what that means?
It's talking about the different nations. Nebuchadnezzar's nation was the head of gold, and then it goes off to the different nations that will take over until we get to the current nation that is in control.
Got it. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Thank you. So, I wonder why all of these would be like important in relation to the Feast of Dedication. We're gonna find out. So, when we look at the word dedication or dedicate, and if you would like, I can hit the light and then it'll probably be clearer, unless it's good the way that it is. Is that good? Is that too much? Somebody's like, cut it back on, I'm out. I saw somebody's head nod already. So, the word dedication is the word Hanukkah, or sure, the and so what they say the word Hanukkah means is simply an initiation, a consecration, or dedicating. However, if you actually break down the letters to the word Hanukkah or Hanukkah, you have the Chet, which means, and that's the very, very, very first letter that's closest to this side of the room over here. It's the very, very, very first letter up in the top of this screenshot. The Chet means to fence in, to protect, to separate, or to cut off. So we have a separation. The Nun is the second letter, and that is the seed, the offspring, a life or action, or the heir to the throne, right? Then you have the Kof, or the Kaf, and that is the palm of the hand, to allow, to cover something, to open the hand, and it is the power to lift up or the power to suppress. So we have a cover, right? Because even if I lift up something, I can lift it up being protected, right? Let's say you had a brand new newborn baby and like 12 kids, you had them in their car seat on the floor, right? And 12 kids came running in the house, all crazy like, because they're kids, not children. What would you probably do to the baby? Would you leave it on the floor? What would you do? You would lift it up, right? Why? To protect it. Very good. So, it is the power to lift up, but it is also the power to suppress. Those children come running in the house, and you could stop that right there. Braxton P. Hartnebrig style. Right? Some of y'all got that.
I got it.
All right. And then you have the Hey, the very last letter, which is to behold, show, or to reveal. Or we get the word revelation. So if you put all that together, Hanukkah, or dedication, you have to separate the seed, covering or lifting up the revelation. To separate the seed, covering or lifting up the revelation. I was about to say it, and I caught myself. I was about to say next slide. So consider this. In Proverbs, or Mishlei 22:6, it says, train up a child in the way they should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. But when you look at the word train, it is the word, the root or the parent word for Hanukkah. It means to dedicate, to consecrate, or to initiate. So dedicate the child into the way they should go. And when they are old, he won't depart from it. Why? Because he's set apart to the thing. So if we go back to separate the seed by covering or lifting up the revelation. So we're going to test if the breakdown of the word actually makes sense in relation to the script. To separate the seed by covering or lifting up the revelation. Train up the child, right? So you have the seed by lifting up the revelation. Separating the seed by covering and lifting up the revelation. So you have the dedicating of the child into the way. The seed being separated from everything else. And the promise is that when he's old, he won't depart from the very thing that you dedicated him to. The irony in that is, some of us have dedicated our children in ways, even though we use scriptures and the Bible, in a way that was not the way. And so we struggle with reaching our children in relation to bringing them into the walk, because as they got older, they're now attached, they're affixed to the way you dedicated them way back when. And so we'll say things like, I raised my child in the church, but then you wonder why they won't leave the church, or you wonder why they dismiss both the church and the way, because it's possible that the image that the child saw was you manipulating the church, and that was the way. So they say, okay, I can do the same thing. I just don't have to go to the building. You see, the train of thought never left, and they stick to it. And it is only by the mercy of the Most High that our eyes were opened to see the truth, to see the reality of the thing. And so this is why, as parents, we must be patient and, how does Ema say, long suffering with them, because you're chipping away at a rock to get to the heart of a thing. And if all they see is the sledgehammer, the AK-47, the bazooka, you just dropping bombs on them, they'll never come to realize this, because they see you doing what you did here over here. So to them, no change. They look at you like you're still in the way. You just do some things different. And so we have to be very, very careful with how we look at the word dedicated, even for ourselves, and how we treat our minds, our ears, our eyes, these gates, right? How we treat them, we have to be very careful. Are they dedicated to the Most High, or are they on loan to Him from time to time? They're not on loan to Him. You're just deceiving yourself to think that you're in something that you're not, that you may not be. So the word dedicate is very, very, very important, because right now, as I'm saying this, we should be checking about ourselves and this walk to see if we're really in it. Because it's easy to deceive a person. It's not so easy to deceive the Most High. Yes, ma'am.
So when we look at this scripture right here, the 2026, I remember we went over this one time in the chat, some time back. And so that would mean that this just came to me.
Yeah.
This was written before the Brit Hadashah, right?
Yes.
So whenever our family members say, well, it says train your child in the way, then how can it be just the Gospels if this was written before the Gospels had even come?
Right.
That's just something to consider.
Right. Because they use it.
Right, right.
And so there is a danger that we deceive ourselves into thinking we did a thing that we didn't do. And if you have smaller children, you're more fortunate, because you're at a position where you can correct the error, right? And hope that they don't really remember what was former, and they see the latter, right? But if you're unfortunate in that, you know, they're a lot older, where they can call you out, you have to be wise enough to know what to take in and to own up to, and then at the same time, you have to be wise enough to know, okay, that's just an attack. That's different, right? And it's hard, but I bet it was hard for Harriet Tubman every time she went back after her people, over and over and over again. And then when they increased the mileage to Canada, rather than saying, all right, I've done enough, she said, it ain't nothing but a thing. She didn't say that. And she went back. Wait a minute. I think there's someone else that did that. Did Mashiach come back after a people that was stiff-necked and stubborn? And he constantly used people that he dedicated to the cause to do a thing. So when we look at the word dedication, as it relates to a feast, we need to understand like what we're talking about, what we're looking at. And then we have to test the things to see if what we think is true, or is it just something that we've just heard this teacher say, that teacher say, that teacher say, it must be true. But you haven't studied it out to see if it's so. Don't take my word for anything. Get in the scripts, test it. And if it's wrong, you have a responsibility to call it out. You have a responsibility to call it out.
I think one of
He's calling something out. No.
Right now.
One of the structures of what he's talking about in the family is the older women should train the younger women, because that's what's coming to you. And the men should be the reinforcer, and also the men should train the younger men how to be men. That's one thing that Christianity never taught us. They taught us how to think like our slave master. And that's what Christianity is all about.
There's a spirit attached to everything that we do. And I'm always thinking about the verse where the Most High said he will not share his esteem with another. So if you're doing something in the name of something, the Most High is not there. Because he's not going to share that with that spirit, that other mighty one that you're.
Right.
You can't call it this way, you know. I'm doing this in the name of JC. Well, that's not the law. He's not going to share that with whomever you think, even if you think you are. He's not going to share that. Now, his word is alive and powerful. And his word is grit.
It can even go down into the marrow. It's in the soul.
But that's why some people you find that were most deeply in Christianity are the ones who are the hardest to reach. Because that spirit has engulfed them.
I would say any religion that you are committed to
Right.
is going to be the strong man that binds you.
It's a bunch of gods.
And it will only be by the hand of the Most High that you can be set free. Right? So the parent word for Hanukkah is this, the word that I'm about when I click to the next screen, the first part. You have the chet, the nun, and the kol. So you have the separated seed that's covered. So that's the word right there. That's your responsibility, and that is our responsibility as Bishop Hakah, as it relates to our children, that we have to separate the seed and cover them in the way that they should go, so that when they're older, they don't depart from it. So if the breakdown that we just did right here to separate the seed by covering and lifting up the revelation. If that is the truth, if that is a more true definition of what the word Hanukkah is or the word dedication is, then can we find this in the book relating to people being dedicated, right? Yeah, we can. Yes, we can. So here are a few examples of people who actually fit the definition. You got actually Adam. Was he not a seed that was separated for a purpose? And was he not covered in the garden? He was dedicated. Now, some things kind of went down, went a little south, and he got booted from the dedication. But that doesn't negate the fact that that was in his creation. That was what he was designed to do, to be dedicated or to be set apart from everything else, everyone else. Then you have even Shem. You have the sons of Noah. You have Shem, Ham, Japheth. Well, you have Ham and Japheth that did their thing, but Shem was set apart. Meaning, Shem means what? The name, which denotes what? Character, authority, reputation. You have the shin and then the mem, the separating of the way. Then you even have Samson. If you go to Judges 13, 5 through 7, when Amalekim comes and speaks to Samson's mom and gives her instruction on what she is to eat or what she is not to eat, what she is not to drink, and your child will be, what was the word?
Nazarite.
Set apart, a Nazarite, but set apart, dedicated to a particular purpose and a particular cause. You even have Dawid. We don't see him when he's young. We don't see him when he's a little boy. If you pay attention as you read about him, you do see it. There's no way a young man can fight a lion and like be successful. We talking about a wild lion and then a baby. Like, come on, like really? There's actually a video of wrestlers playing tug of war with a lion cub, and there's 4 wrestlers on one side pulling, and it is only the lion cub on the other, and the lion is taking on the task, just dragging them, and they trying hard to pull it back. The baby lion is just toying with them, pulling it back. So when I saw that, I was like, and Dawid, let's say it was a baby, let's say it wasn't even like a full-grown, maned out, bearded up, locked out lion. Let's say it was just a small one. That's still a task. Then you have Yirmiyahu. The Most High tells Jeremiah or Yirmiyahu specifically that he had created him for a unique purpose and a unique task. Then you have Israel, and he reveals that all throughout the book, but there's one particular verse where he like spells it all out. And that's in Isaiah or Yeshayahu 44 and verse 2. Could somebody actually pull that up and read that for me?
Thus says Yahweh that we inform from the womb, which will help you. Fear not, O Yaakov, a servant from the womb.
So from the womb, but from before the womb, but from the womb, Israel, Jacob was dedicated, was set apart from all the other nations. Then you even have Mashiach or Yeshua, who some people would try to classify as JC, as she was mentioning. And Matthew, or the book of Matthew, chapter 1, verse 21. And that whole dialogue, there is a Malakim or an angel who comes, talks to Mary, and lets her know what? You have a special child that you are going to give birth to. And here are some instructions. And that she was highly favored among women. So, do they fit the description of the separating of the seed and them being covered by lifting up? But the question is, what did they lift up? They all lifted up in some capacity the Most High. The name, the character, the authority, the reputation of the Most High. All right, so here we go. So what was we talking about again? What was we talking about from the beginning? Where's the reason? Right, feast of dedication. We got off on the tangent talking about people. Right, back to the subject. But is it specifically mentioned in the New Testament, aka, or also known as the Brit Hadashah? So if you hear the term Brit Hadashah, that is someone relating to the New Testament or the renewed covenant. Anybody? Does anybody know anything about that? Like, is Feast of Dedication mentioned in the
Yeah.
It took too long. There it is.
He's got it. He said he got it.
So I did that. Because he got me over there earlier. You gave to me, I have to get back to you. So, if you wouldn't mind, hey, can you, he who's in the back, turn to you, the book of Yehukanan, 10, 22 through 23. Oh, okay. Could you read that for me? Yeah. Me?
Oh, okay.
If not, it's okay. I'll get somebody else.
Get Amaziah.
Okay, Amaziah. He turned to it.
I don't want to be too loud on the Yukonai 10, 22. And it was at, what is this, a large letter by the and it was at Jerusalem, like, the Feast of Dedication. And it was winter. Yeshua walked in the temple in Solomon's or Yedidiah's porch.
Okay. So we do see the Feast of Dedication in the New Testament.
Okay, this is like
So, right off the top, if you are a New Testament only kind of person, it's there. So now you have to address the fact that it's there. If you're a Torah only person, well, you're not exempt yet, because we haven't went there yet. And if you're a Tanakh only person, well, hold tight, we haven't gone there yet. What we see here is the one book that, or the one section that people often run to get out of observing feasts is the New Testament. But here you see the Feast of Dedication specifically mentioned in the book of John, or Yehukanan. So we have what's called the four Gospels, right? Who knows the names of them? All right, so you got Matthew, Marcus, Lucas, and Yehukanan, right? All four of them were disciples of Mashiach, right?
No.
Wrong. Wrong. Who was a disciple of Mashiach? Thank you. We talked about it, didn't we? Yeah, you remember. See, check on learning. That's how it works. To explain something to somebody, follow back, test them to see if they remember what. That's how this works. So very, very good. Thank you. So then, who was Marcus and who was Lucas, or who was Mark and who was Luke? If they weren't disciples, if you're saying that they weren't disciples to Mashiach, to the Messiah, then who were they?
Luke was a scribe.
Okay, Luke was a physician and a scribe. Who did he scribe for?
Yeah.
Paul. Does anybody know what other book Luke wrote? He wrote the book of Acts. Very good. So Luke was not with Mashiach. Luke knew the people that was with Mashiach. Does that make sense? And he wrote about the disciples and what happened through the book of Acts. Right? So you would say through the resurrection and what happened thereafter. What about Mark? Does anybody know the history of Mark? Marcus?
Was a man.
Say it again.
I said he was a
Sorry, you made me sound like.
See, you had all this credibility built up, and you just threw it all away. So, if you do research on Marcus, it is alleged that he is the son of Kepha, aka Peter. That is what is alleged. So, when you look at it, if you have in the Gospels stories that you feel like contradict, I would, as for me, if I was in that predicament, I would lean more heavily on Matthew, and Yehukanan, John, because they were the actual disciples of the Messiah. So you're getting a first-hand account, rather than Lucas and Marcus, who were not first-hand witnesses. They were like maybe second-hand witnesses. Now that doesn't mean that they didn't witness any, but what that does mean is that they didn't witness all.
It's primary. That's what you get primary and secondary from. Literally,
Right.
literally.
So your primary witnesses, Matthew and Yehukanan. Your secondary witness would be Marcus and Lucas. Just gee whiz information in case you didn't know. But we see the Feast of Dedication happening by someone who was an eyewitness. That's important. So I went through all of that to explain, well, this person is actually an eyewitness. You don't read about it in the other Gospels, specifically mentioning the Feast of Dedication. It may allude to the story, but it doesn't mention specifically the Feast of Dedication. So, now we also have other scriptures to consider in relation specifically to the Feast of Dedication. Because there are multiple things that was dedicated throughout the scriptures. You had altars, you had the temple, you had the sanctuary, you had the wall, and you also had idols. So what we're gonna do is we're going to what? We're gonna break up in groups, and we're gonna take one of the sections, and we're gonna do some research, compile some data, and then we're gonna come back and share with each other. Fortunate for you all, it does not appear like there is as much as it was last week, right? Once again, I want to remind you, if you start to get a little famished or whatever, you can grab some snacks off the table, grab something to drink. So, let's say making sacrifices.
They had to do sacrifices, but also, since Levites couldn't own property or anything, with those sacrifices, we were kind of like, oh, they get to eat now, they finally get to eat. Because, yeah, I mean, they don't have property, right?
Right. They weren't allowed to own land.
They weren't allowed to own land, so when they got their tithes in, they were able to.
So what we see with that is the Levites are now in order.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? The Levites are now operating in the job that they're supposed to be doing, be an example to Israel, who now has a wall and there's an altar, but everything's in ruins, right? Did I get that right? All right.
When was it? When in the year was it? Basically harvest time.
Okay. Huh. We read in the Brit Hadashah, when Yeshua was celebrating it around the same location, it was what? It was in the wintertime. Interesting. Go ahead.
Okay. Because the reason we said that, because we read where it talked about harvest. So we figured it would probably be fall.
Right. Well, then we're gonna wait, until don't finish the wall. We got a few more months. Why was it important? Okay, you said something. Yep. Are there examples of this in Torah?
Dedications. Or
What you got?
Yes.
that's our answer. Yes, there are.
Could you provide an example of the dedication of the wall?
Of the wall?
Of a wall.
Of a wall.
No. And you won't. So I scared you. But the wall was a symbol. A complete wall was a symbol of the completeness of the people coming back into the land, back into their order. Are y'all tracking in the back, Lee and y'all?
Yeah, we got questions. Yeah.
Okay. In relation to Netanyahu, or in relation to y'all stuff?
It was a verse with the,
Say it again.
It was with the. It was with our stuff.
Is there a correlation between celebrating the wall and us today?
Because it's basically, we're the remnants. We're the ones that are coming back, the awakening. So, the same thing that they're doing, they did back then, they are now.
Okay.
They're returning, now we're returning.
Right.
Back to order.
However, there is a difference. There's a distinction. Number one, what was your answer?
In the land, and the surrounding villages,
So we're coming back together, but we're not there yet. Okay, very good. Thank y'all. Man, that was awesome. Are y'all ready now? Voice the men? Y'all back there saying, ooh, yeah. Oh, they're ready to go if y'all are ready.
Go ahead, King.
All right.
That was reverse psychology worked out there.
I was gonna stand up anyway.
You had the opportunity first and you didn't go.
Yeah, I was trying to help out.
Hey y'all, let's not do what they did to them.
Y'all can do that. That's cool. Just make it go by quick. So, where they were at, and where they.
So where were they at as it relates to a land designation?
So ours is temple, coming out of the wilderness into the battle. Second, where they were celebrating the dedication.
So wait, so they were in the wilderness?
Yeah, they were coming out of the wilderness.
They were coming out of the wilderness?
Into what?
Into the city of David.
Okay, so they weren't in the wilderness when they were celebrating this. They were in the land. Is that what you're saying?
So they were coming out of the wilderness.
So just for clarity's sake for everybody, let's say the other side of this table is the land. This side of the table is not the land. Are you saying they were on this side of the table when they were celebrating it there? Or were they on this side of the table when they were celebrating?
They were in Jerusalem.
So they were in the land. But you're saying they fresh out, you know what I'm saying?
Out of captivity.
Fresh out of captivity, right? But they're in the land.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, and then the second one is Jerusalem dedicated to the temple of David. This is what we have.
So for clarification's sake, they got the temple, right?
Temple.
So the scriptures that they had was Devarim 20 and 5, 3rd Ezra 7 and 7, 2nd Maccabees 2, 9 through 9, chapter 2, 9 through 19, Ezra 6, 16 and 17, 1 Kings 8 and 63, and 2nd Chronicles 7 and 5. So what he's doing is, essentially he's compiling information because obviously there are correlations between them. So rather than going like each and every single one, he's giving you a, correct?
That's right.
All right.
So how long was the celebration? We had 7 days.
Wait, so what were they celebrating? Oh, you answered that, the temple. Thank you. How long?
7 days.
So yours was 7 days. Yours, as far as you know, was only 1 day. Interesting. Does it mention how they celebrated?
Yeah, they offered bullocks, rams, lambs, goats.
Rams, lambs,
You name it. So, yeah, that's what they offered. It has specific details in each one.
Okay.
5, everyone who was, well, 5 is basically who was included. It was everyone that was in Israel, the Levites and the strangers amongst them.
So everyone that was in the land got to participate in this celebration.
Also the strangers that were with them as well in the Levites.
So everyone that was in the land that was attached to Israel got to celebrate.
Got that on camera. We ain't no type of group.
And you said they made sacrifices, right?
That's right.
Hey, y'all, they made sacrifices, right? Okay, go ahead.
All right. 7 or 6, I'm sorry. We have it on the 23rd day of the month of Adar in the 6th year of Darius.
So what is the month of Adar?
That's like what?
12 month.
12 months.
You can find that in
So that would
Esther.
be about December, is that what you're saying?
December. Yeah.
You said the 12th day?
12th
No,
month.
23rd day.
23rd.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we talking like, well, I won't even say.
Don't mention
Yeah. It's just weird that it correlates.
Like a dry
That's
heat,
all.
but-
Yeah, no.
All right.
7. 7 is the second temple dedication. That's what we have. So the dedication of the second temple that was being built.
Oh, dedication of the second temple that was being built.
8, you can find this. We actually have examples unlike others. We have.
Hey, y'all, that red sweater is inspiring.
We have 22:2, Bidmidbar 28:6. You can look those two up and see the examples that it's given for.
Can you read the one that I gave you? The one. Like, I know you have more than that because y'all found one, but what did the one that I gave you say?
In two.
Bidmidbar 20 and 5.
Yeah. What did it say? The 25.
Yeah, man, what is up with that?
What?
Remember, it says, the officer says unto the men, if you built the house and you have not dedicated it, go back and dedicate your house, for if you die in battle, then another man dedicate your house. How is that applicable to a temple?
Okay. What is another name for a temple? The temple was the temple was also called a house, right? So the correlation is the seriousness in dedicating your house, your physical dwelling place.
You're getting ahead of us. We're going
You asked me the question because obviously you couldn't answer it.
You all right? I'll edit that out.
You said 20 and 5, right?
You were saying, sir?
All right, so he said Bidmidbar 20 and 5, correct?
Yeah.
And wherefore have ye made us to come out of Mizraim to bring us into this evil
So
place?
to come out of Egypt and to bring us into
This evil place.
Okay.
It is not place of seed or of figs or of vines or of pomegranates, neither is there any water to drink. And Moshe and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly unto the door of the tabernacle of the assembly, and they fell upon their faces, and the glory of Yahuwah appeared unto them. And Yahuwah spoke unto Moshe, saying, Take the rod and gather the assembly together, and you and Aaron your brother, and speak ye unto the rock before their eyes, and it shall give forth his water, and he shall bring forth to them water out of the rock. So you shall give the assembly and the beast to drink. And Moshe took the rod before Yahuwah, and he commanded him. And Moshe and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, and said unto them, Hear now, ye rebels, must we fetch you water out of this rock?
No, it's fine.
Yeah. You good. I know you just got the
So what was the correlation?
Of the whole matter of that point?
The last one.
Comparing to the temple, or like I'm trying to figure out that.
Yeah, you just started randomly reading the verse.
Of your,
The first one, okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, we did get our correlation right?
You did.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, number 9.
Well, I'm at 9.
On the paper.
I think you got to your point way sooner.
Yeah, I know.
So basically, it was just completed to the second temple after coming out of captivity. Our dedication is our body of the temple that we dedicated to the Most High.
You got a script for that, or you just making that up? Or that sound nice and philosophical?
First Corinthians.
I guess, is that it?
Well, you said you want a chapter and verse, right? Or what?
Do you have one off the top of your head? You got it write it down? That's okay.
Say it again.
You said, I said First Corinthians.
No, say what you said again.
Oh, I
He
said
said his bodies are a temple.
our body is a temple that, so that we dedicate it to the Most High.
All right, Romans, I think, what?
See, we're going with our things. Y'all ready to go?
Oh, I'm about to pull up the script.
First Corinthians 6:19.
6:19.
Thank you. Told our about.
It was First Corinthians.
Was there more that you wanted to add to that? Or are you good?
No, we're good. Is everybody good?
Yes.
So, wait. So the wall, interesting, was in the fall. It was only a day, as we understand it. And they were offering sacrifices and stuff as part of the celebration of the restoration of the order of people being what they're supposed to be. Levites, a light to Israel, Israel, light to the world. Y'all, the temple, something else that you may have kind of sped right by that you just read, was it's interesting how when the Most High revealed his presence, it was always right there. Not always, excuse me, but he oftentimes in the Torah would reveal himself right there in the tabernacle or in the tent of meetings. And you read it. Yeah, so the indwelling of the presence of the Most High right there.
Yeah, all the priests left the temple, and the entire temple was filled with so much smoke they couldn't stand it.
Right, and so you're also referring to 2 Chronicles, right? And saying that when they dedicated the temple, Solomon's temple, how the presence of the Most High came in to the point where they couldn't even minister and do their work. All right, Rev, y'all ready?
Yes.
I just read it, bro. I just read it.
Okay, this was very overwhelming, by the way, because,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, I didn't read any of the other books.
Got
So far, however, we had sanctuaries, and the first question that we came upon.
2 Baruch 61 and 2. It's overwhelming. All right. Sanctuary. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yes, so they were in Jerusalem.
All right.
And,
So they were in the land.
In the land.
So this is the third. Wait, were y'all in the land? Y'all were in the land. This is the third time we read where they was in the land celebrating this feast, whether it's in a wall, a temple, and now a sanctuary. Go ahead.
so we came across that they were celebrating the temple
Okay.
as well. And it was actually 14 days that they celebrated.
14
and that's
days.
in 1 Kings. Yeah, 1 Kings 8:66. And they offered a lot of sacrifices.
Yes.
Burnt offering, meat offering.
Wait. So pause right there.
Yes.
Hey, y'all at the temple, right? How much stuff did Solomon offer on the altar?
He had like
1,000
written down.
He doesn't know. It was a lot. Go ahead.
We have a number.
Yeah, we got to know.
Oh, they actually have a number.
100 bullets, 200 rounds, 12 goats. What else? Yeah, I got it.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
Interestingly enough, it's the same thing.
In second.
Go ahead.
Okay, so, what question?
You said 14 days?
Oh,
Does
right.
it mention how they celebrate?
Oh, yes, they did the offering. Bring an offering. So who did it include? Who was celebrating? It was all the children of Israel who had celebrated.
Pardon me, just a second. Yes. I thought y'all was done. Are y'all done or y'all not done? Or?
We were discussing points, clarity.
I mean, and I mean no disrespect, but you're gonna miss everything that she's saying if y'all are still talking about your points. We can circle back around to y'all if y'all
It
want.
was in reference to the point of the 14 days that she brought up.
Oh, okay. Y'all wanna bring it out?
we're in agreement. It's just, he originally said 7 days, but in 1 Kings 8:63, it was 7 and 7 days. On the 8th day, they made a dedication to the king after dismissing.
Yes.
Then they came back together for the celebration.
Yes, sir. I was hoping. If you don't, I kept coming back. Like, is it?
It's just, it's not up there, so it wasn't included.
I understand.
So, I was saying who had celebrated, and it was all of the children of Israel, and I think we also said Gentiles as well.
Everybody in the land.
Everybody in the land.
Mixed both two that's in the land.
Attached to Israel.
Yes. And that was in the 7th month. So we said that fell probably late August into September as well.
Okay.
So say, or I mean October.
So
Fallish.
in the fall-ish, in the winter, in relation to Mashiach. Interesting. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes, so 7, why was it important? Right, so the ark of the Lord was resting in the temple, so that everyone knows that the Lord was, oh, right. I didn't write this, I'm sorry, I'm trying to read someone else's writing. Okay, so we said it was important because the ark was there, and Yah was with them. So, yes. Yes, team, please support. Fill in what I'm not quite getting right.
What you said is so everybody would know that Yahuwah is Elohim.
That's it.
Okay.
That the Lord is God.
Yes. Okay,
And
so then,
why would they know that?
Actually, as a result of what happened during this time, while Shlomo was, after he got through praying, fire rained down from heaven to consume all of the sacrifices.
Right. Are there other examples of this in Torah?
so far, I think collectively we decided no, that there wasn't any examples.
There was a rationale behind that.
Yes, go ahead.
So during the time of, during the Torah, after the Torah is, so after you finish, after you come out of Deuteronomy, they're getting ready to go into the land. At that time, Yahuwah was their king, so there wasn't a need for a dwelling place because he was their king. They didn't ask for it, but they didn't demand a king until after they got in the land.
So I agree and disagree. I think that regardless whether they would have had a king or not, they would have made the Most High dwelling place. Because even though they didn't have a king, he was in a tent, right? And so if it was all about just the presence of the Most High, just, randomly visiting or something like that, they would have never had a tent of meetings, and they would have never had a tabernacle. So I think that the intent was always for there to be a dwelling place, just like he had a garden, and he put Adam and Chawah in it, and then, I don't know, maybe later on it says something else about it. But I appreciate that. Brother, you did a great job. Thank you for presenting.
Just to your last question. So,
I'm sorry.
So, what's the correlation? The correlation is the instruction during the time period. Shlomo gave instruction on what to do while we were in the land, what to do if we misbehaved and we were captive in the land, and what to do if we were taken out of the land.
Right. And so the instructions were that if you were in captivity, not in the land, to do what?
To face the land, to pray to Yah so that he would hear you and answer.
So there was instructions. You all came across instructions that if you leave the land, that when you get yourself together and you remember that the people would turn toward the land and pray to the Most High, because the understanding was that he would be dwelling.
He would hear.
And so wouldn't that look like a picture of unity? All over the world, people turning and facing one direction, particularly, remember, it doesn't matter where you're at. They're not all facing different directions. They're all, wherever they are turned toward a particular location, praying wait a minute, does that not look like what Israel would have looked like in, let's say, the wilderness, when you had in the center the tent of meetings, and it talks about how everyone, all the men on their own porch, turn and face toward the tent and begin to fall down and worship the Most High? Would that not look like a global picture of the same picture that we see in the Torah? Interesting. What y'all got?
Okay, soccer? All right.
Unless y'all want to go last.
We have idols.
So, yeah, we have idols.
It should be quick.
Number one, they were in the plains of Dura in Babylon.
Okay. So we actually have the dedication of an idol in Babylon. All right.
They were celebrating the image that Nebuchadnezzar had constructed to celebrate his kingdom that
So he had a dream, and then he erects this idol, and then it's now they're dedicating the idol. Wow. How long was the celebration?
So it's not really mentioned. It just says that every time they hear the sound of the horn,
That was the point. It was year round.
Yeah, it was anytime. How many times he wanted
Guys,
to.
you didn't say it.
No, but we did. We said that.
You said it in your group. You didn't say it out loud this time.
It counts.
It counts.
All right. Does it mention how they celebrated? Yes. Every time they heard.
the flute, and then they had to bow down to.
So was it just a flute, or was it particular music in general?
It was a moment.
Hey, I wonder, is that like when you go like just if you see like a random group of people and you just walked up like with a stereo that was really loud and hit play and the beat dropped and everybody be like, hey, hey. Oh, I don't know. I just wondered. Who all did it include?
So it included all the nations.
Everyone.
Everybody that was under his
Authority. Okay. What time of year? Year round, right?
Yes, year round.
But we also said that because it says something about the clothing that they were wearing.
Yes.
That it might have been cold.
They were wearing coats and trousers and
When it went down. At least for the very first.
Why was this dedication important?
It's not important. It's not really an important part, but like for the people to not die.
So earlier we talked about how the Most High divides, and this may have been like when we was with the men's. I can't. How there is. Oh yeah, it was in the room. My apologies. The men, we talked about how the Most High will allow things happen for the point of separating what's his. And the scattering will take place, right? So in this particular instance, I believe, I'm not saying this is what the scriptures say, I believe this was an opportunity for the Most High to say, who's with me? Even though so you had that opportunity to say it, you didn't say it, it doesn't count. It doesn't count. You had an opportunity to say it, that's two. That's two. Geez, 3 for your house though, God.
And then also notice that judgment came upon the accusers.
All right. So this was so important because it turned out to be a sign for the Israelites that the Most High was still with them. Because 3 Hebrew men, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, refused to bow down. And you'll hear Shadrach, Meshach. No, it's Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And they weren't boys, they were men. And so because they refused to bow down, they were thrown into a furnace and didn't burn. Not their clothes, not their hair. And when they looked into the fire, and he had it turned up 7 times hotter. It killed the people that were throwing them in, but not them. And when he looked into the fire, he saw 4 people and brought them out, right? So if you was an Israelite and you saw that and you had just bowed, what would that do to you?
You remember?
Yeah. So
Repeat. So she can hear.
say that one more time.
They were the ones that got thrown in.
So the ones that went and was like, they not bowing, right? Little Isaac, shout out. So, right. But they got taken care of. But I'm saying the Israelite people who bowed down, seeing this take place. Because remember, Nebuchadnezzar meant it for evil, but Yah turned it around for the good. So that all these who bowed down or was about to bow down see the men coming out of the fire and they remember who they are. Like, man, I bowed down. They didn't bow down. Sees them. Okay, wait, no. And
we were talking about the golden calf when they were celebrating coming out of captivity.
Yep. And the Levites.
And we also brought up,
Wait. So that particular situation with the golden calf, they had an opportunity to repent. Came down and said, who's on Yah's side? And what happened? All the Levites was like, man, good Yah. And all the people that didn't say that, the Levites were given swords and told to do what? Slaughter everybody that's not with the Most High. So, interesting. The parallel.
and we were also talking about, it correlates kind of, sort of, but just the fact that y'all revealed something that Nebuchadnezzar, it was a good, like, I'm revealing this to you kind of thing. And, Nebuchadnezzar was all laying prostrate, he's, yo Elohim, all this stuff, and then he arrests this idol. But it reminded me of the serpent, the bronze serpent, how they were getting ate up by the fiery serpents, and he instructed Moshe to make the serpent. And then later they started worshiping the serpent, like
That was
incense and things. Like it did. Yeah.
Interesting. So that correlates to us because we're in the same boat right now, especially during the time of Thanksgiving, right?
Right.
And Xmas.
Yeah. Out of the land.
We have a choice.
And although it's not mandated at this time for us to do it, we don't know what's to come for them to say this is the mandate for everybody to do it and what choice.
Right. Because right now on your job it's an option. But what happens when they say, no, you will? Or goodbye?
I see it.
So y'all, are y'all good? All right, y'all Ladin, what y'all got? Run it down real quick.
So we have the altar.
They had the altar. And so they had Bamidbar 7:11 through 88. So that is the Torah. Then they had the book of Jasher or Yasher 83 and 7, 2 Chronicles 7 and 9, and 1 Maccabees 4:56 through 59. So where were they at?
So they were in the wilderness,
They were in the wilderness, okay?
and they were doing the dedication of the altar.
So in the Torah, there is a dedication of the altar in the wilderness. In the Torah, they're celebrating, dedicating an altar in the wilderness. Interesting. Cut. What? You mean to tell me somebody didn't concoct some idea to do something because it seemed like it was cool to do, but the Most High instructed them to do it?
So the celebration was 12 days.
12 days, 1 day, 14 days. Y'all is maybe 14. He said 7 and 7, 49 days. No, I'm joking. 14 days. And thank you for bringing that out. Y'all had how many? One day? So, y'all had how many? Man, but that was so idle. So go ahead.
Alright, so how they celebrated it was they had each chief of each 12 tribes of Israel offer up 1 silver plate weighed 1/3 shekels, 1 silver basin of 70 shekels, and both of them full of fine flour mixed with oil for a grain offering. And they had a golden dish of 10 shekels full of incense, 1 bull, 1 ram, 1 male lamb a year old for a burnt offering, a male goat for a sin offering, a sacrifice of peace offering, 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 male goats, 5 male lambs a year old. And so that was
Each one offered that.
And that was each day. So it started off with the tribe of Judah the first day.
Hey, Judah, stand up.
And then they had.
I knew it.
So the first day was Judah, and they offered all that. And the second day it was all the so on for 12 days.
For 12 days. So yours was only 12 days.
That's one for each tribe.
Oh no, I got it. You get it. I know who did. How many days was theirs? Nope. 1. I said right here. Right there. All right, so that was on purpose. It didn't matter what you was gonna say. I was gonna be like this. All right. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So it included the 12 chiefs
Okay.
of each tribe. So it was
Representing the 12 tribes.
representing the 12 tribes.
Okay.
So it was all of Israel.
Okay.
So in the Torah, we didn't exactly find like each month and year, but in 2nd Chronicles, it said the 7th month of the 23rd day.
So 7th month is around September, October time frame, not the middle of the winter. Interesting. Huh. You don't say.
So
did it include Gentiles and or was it just like Israel thing, Levite thing?
Just Israel.
Ah, but remember in the Torah, when Israel rolled out, they rolled out with strangers too. And the law was one law, all people, strangers, and Israel alike. So it would include the stranger.
So why was they celebrating? Why was it important? It was important because Moshe just finished up setting the tabernacle, and the altar was anointed. So they needed to dedicate offerings to the temple.
Okay.
So number 8, it is in Torah. So then number 9. So what's the correlation between them and us? So they had a tabernacle and a temple to offer their offerings to, and we unfortunately don't have an altar to have put offerings.
So in addition to that, in your group, you all had the story of the Maccabees, where Antiochus Epiphanes comes in into Judah and to the temple, right? And this is in the Apocrypha, and sacks the temple, takes out everything that's inside, and they come and they offer all kind of pigs and all kind of abominations on the altar. And so they have to come back, right, when they finally get a sense of ownership back over their stuff, and they have to rededicate the altar. The altar. Not the temple. It doesn't say that. It says the altar. But instead of rededicating it, they had to build a brand new one from scratch because they didn't want to try to offer something that's clean on something that had been defiled. Interesting. And so, as we look at that, that is typically the sole reason when you talk to people about, hey, why are you celebrating the Feast of Dedication? That's typically what they turn to. In addition to, there's another story in Maccabees where in the temple, there was the menorah, and there was only enough oil in the lamp or on it to last for a day, but it lasted 7 days. And so that being a miracle, they take that and make that into the Feast of Dedication, or the Feast of Lights, as it's called. So they take just the Maccabees accounts and we make it a thing when there are so many other accounts of them celebrating the dedication of the wall, the temple, the altar, and idols did it too. Right? So 1 Corinthians 3:16 says, know you not that you are the temple of Yah, and that the Ruach of Yahuwah dwells in you.
Hallelujah.
And also 2 Corinthians 6:16, which is what I think you had brought out, is, and what agreement hath the temple of Yah with idols? For you are the temple of the living Elohim. As Yah have said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And if you remember, if you go back and read the Torah, that's almost a straight pull out of the Torah. So, will we celebrate this feast in the kingdom? This last verse. Revelation 21:22. Could somebody grab that for me real quick? I actually think this is like the last slide.
Alright.
Read it real loud. 21:22.
And I saw no temple therein.
Whoa, what? What are you talking about? You said, what?
And I saw no temple therein.
So in the kingdom, there was no temple? The kingdom to come. Go ahead.
For Yahuwah Elohim Sabaoth and the Lamb are the temple of it.
They are. Not we are. They are. Because we're dwelling in them. Go ahead, continue.
And the city had no need of the sun, neither of the moon to shine in it. The glory of Yahuwah did lighten it, and the Lamb is the light thereof. And the nations of them which are saved shall walk in the light of it, and the kings of the earth do bring their glory and honor it. And the gates of it shall not shut at all by day, for there shall be no night there. And they shall bring the glory and honor of the nations unto it. And there shall in no wise enter into it anything that defiles, neither whatsoever works abomination, or makes a lie, but they which are written in the Lamb's scepter of life.
So, as it relates to should we celebrate the Feast of Dedication or not, I am not the person to tell you that you should or that you shouldn't. But what I am going to tell you is you should know why you're celebrating something before you take off celebrating something. Because then you fall into the same error that our ancestors consistently fell into, just doing something just because they read, somewhere, somebody said do this, so we do it, without understanding the why behind what you're doing, right? We're fortunate because we're not obeying the law just because someone said obey the law. We're obeying the law because we understand that this is the law is spiritual, and each aspect of the law has something that is valuable to us in the here and now. And so as we come into greater revelations of what that is, it causes obedience to be effortless because we have understanding. So, without understanding, it's very possible that we could fall into error. And so all I'm telling you is this: if you choose to celebrate it, know why you're celebrating. So what we saw was people celebrated a wall, people celebrated a sanctuary, people celebrated a temple, people celebrated an altar, And people even celebrated idols. Right? But our responsibility is to not do that thing. And so we have to be careful that we don't turn the feast days, whether they're the ones that instructed or otherwise, into an idol.
So, in the scripture that Rev was reading, in Revelation, was that 21?
21, 22.
It said that there will be no temple, right? But does that mean that there will be no altar?
Will there be a need to sacrifice? So what is the purpose of sacrificing him? All right. So prior to that, in the garden, prior to sin, there was no sacrifice. That's why the scripture talks about it is better to obey than sacrifice. It's not talking about you doing without a car because you didn't obey, somebody told you to get your oil changed and your motor blew out. Better to obey than sacrifice. That's not what that's talking about. That's talking about it's better to obey the instructions than to have something be sacrificed on your behalf.
So were only sacrifices done on the altar, or were they also for like offerings? Because that's the only reason why I'm asking, is because even if we're not doing sacrificing, if we're, I mean, I know our praise is an offering, but I was just wondering.
Like incense, like bringing in the harvest. Well, remember, these are feast days. But will there be a need for atonement? If it is, it's for the remembrance of it, not because there's still atoning that's taking place. You see what I'm saying? But if there's no sun, no moon, because of the glory of them, there's nothing defiled coming in. Like, you know, these are things we got to consider then. And I bet at that time, no man will have to tell his neighbor to know the Most High. So, with that being said, with understanding, Jeremy, Jayla, that you are the temple, you should be very, very careful with what you let through your gates. And right now we're in a season where there's a time where them gates should close. When you come across something that's defiled, you should close them eye gates, them ear gates, right? And even the sense of smell can be alluring. Wanting to touch something can be alluring. You got to know when to pull them gates back, shut them things down, so that you don't sin against the Most High. Because he's not going to dwell in an unclean temple. And so, if you defiled, and yet you're saying, hey, I have the Ruach living in me, you deceive yourself. And the truth is not in you. But, if your temple is dedicated to the Most High, and you're striving to it constantly, making sure that thing is clean, then that's a sign to the Most High that you take your relationship with him serious. And if you don't do that, you don't take it serious, you might not be his. Don't be a Darnell. Be weak. All right? We say thank